If you've seen anything from us, probably our clips, but maybe just like the prologue or are going to watch our up and coming entire campaign, you might be wondering where the hell are you and what's happening. So this is a brief overview of the world of Pam'ent, my homebrewed D&D setting. I also think it's just interesting to see how other people do world building, so here's how I do it. There are 2 continents in Pam'ent, which has other shit going on, but we'll focus on just the core atmosphere of Pam'ent. There is 2 continents, Dragonsland and the 3 islands, and then a few other islands floating around, mainly a set up to the north, a set up to the south, and then 2 islands in between the 2 main continents that make it possible to sail between the 2. Dragonsland is the oldest in terms of civilization, being ruled by a bunch of independent city-states, most of which, the most powerful of which definitely, are being ruled by dragons themselves. And in my world, dragons not only talk like in D&D, but they don't live in caves. They live in these ginormous palaces with cities around them filled with worshippers and people paying taxes. Like, it is all about making the dragons themselves feel better. They're very vain in that way. But it's also always sort of been too big to ever make a... Like, I have a map for it, but it doesn't cover everything. Like, it's just so big and so slow moving that I never really have time to do a campaign there to do it justice, although I have visited it a couple times. The main setting of my world, the main place that you will be in if you're in my world, is the 3 islands. The 3 islands at the moment are sort of falling apart, but that's what all good kingdoms do. There's depending on who you ask in the 3 islands, you'll be told there's anywhere between 5 to 10 kingdoms, because people do not agree on what's a kingdom and what's not a kingdom. There's lots of political machinations going on. You have a lot of control to my players, so I started with 2 kingdoms, and then through playing games in this world for 4 years, it's grown exponentially. In the very south, at the current time, there is the Erie Grand Duchy. The Erie Grand Duchy used to be a part of the Kingdom of Facade when it had conquered all 3 islands, and then broke off very early in its fall from grace. It is being ruled by the Erie family from the keep of High Hedge, which has a city around it. They're in the farthest south. They're an old elven nation. They're currently being ruled by 2 matriarchs, and they are making some political moves to maybe take over other places that were once ruled by Facade. But that's being stymied because in their territory, there's a sort of no man's land that is currently being ruled over by the only dragon still in the 3 islands, known as Polyphemus, the one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater, a young purple dragon who has sort of taken to mercenaries and knights, making a band of purple knights that go along and steal from people on the road and keep most of the money for themselves and pay some of it to the dragon for the dragon's protection. They've taken over the town of Corn Tower. Near all of this, there is the city of Demon Keep. Demon Keep was the first capital of any kingdom in this land, and was a capital until very recently, when 20 years ago it was conquered. And after being conquered, the new government was never able to put a deep enough stead in it, and then fell completely, so it's been ruled for the last 20 years by a bunch of different gangs and guilds and organizations. It's, as my friend describes it, like 50 gangs in a trench coat pretending to be a city. Like, that's all it is. It's just pure chaos. If you watch the campaign, we will be starting with most of the characters in Demon Keep before they head up to our next location, Oberon, which is the largest city and the capital of the People's Republic of the Red Lands and the Green, also known as Purg. In Purg, There's the city of Oberon and then a bunch of winery fields. It's mostly wineries and hamlets. There's no other big cities in the People's Republic of the Redlands and the Green, especially since they lost the Redlands. It's mostly just wineries, a few grain fields, and then Oberon. Oberon being a big castle along a river with a city off to the side of it. Making our way north is the ruins of Red Pine, which you will have seen if you've seen the prologue. Red Pine gets a little just decimated. Red Pine, at the time of its destruction, was being ruled by the lizard folk who had won it via helping the Vacadian nation in a war. So then they were given the southern island, and then when the southern island fell apart, leaving the Vacadian nation and the lizard people behind, they were able to hold on to their biggest city, Red Pine, until it fell to the Maze. The Maze is an ever-growing forest, the labyrinthine forest, that just grows and grows and grows. It's constantly moving both internally and externally, and there are minotaurs planning it to keep it growing. And in its core, there is a giant tree at the heart of it that houses Baphomet. And that's what the next campaign's about. They have to kill Baphomet, or the Maze will continue to grow and take over the world like the cancer that it is. It's the only city able to strive while being completely surrounded by the Maze is Orbia, also known as Hell's Falls, where it's a small encampment after the Day of White Skies, which comes up briefly in the prologue, but it was when two universes basically exploded and got pulled into the material plane. And now there was a wasteland that's been taken over by the Maze that is the Abyss. The Abyss is the material plane now. When a chaotic evil creature dies, they don't leave the material plane, they just get reborn as an even worse chaotic evil creature. But inside of the city, in the part where the universe has exploded, the Styx flows through the material plane, and you can use that to get to different parts of the lower planes. And the devils, liking to put colonies wherever they can, have a colony named Orbia in what's currently the Maze, but used to be the Wasteland. And some mortals, unlucky as they are, will find themselves there, and mostly of them die, but some of them are able to get out by making a deal. North, crossing over the channel onto the northern island of the Three Islands, is the town of Dundare. A large town surrounded by smaller hamlets, and the town of Dundare. So Dundare sort of just lives in the shadow of the ruins of this much greater city, and is currently struggling with having a lot of rebellions of people who have strong ties to the old nobility, and then the new government, which was put in force very recently. There's a new communist government, because my players are crazy, that took over the Kingdom of Facade in the liberation of Bigport. The biggest city besides for Demon Keep in the Three Islands is Bigport. It's old common name and official name in most documentation. Grosserhofen is but everyone calls it Bigport. That's really its real name, is Bigport. It's a very complex city. It had a strong thieves guild, but that thieves guild is sort of melded with the government, and that's one of the struggles that Dundare is having, is the branch of the thieves guild in Dundare was so connected to nobility that they're unwilling to work with this new government, with like literal members of the old noble family of Dundare being high-ranking members of the Thieves Guild. And this nation of the People's Republic of Facade, which has a bunch of other smaller cities, but its two largest are Grosserhofen and Dundare. And then it's trying to take over many cities in the north and to the south of it. There's a small government known as the Dracovans that hold a church, a very large church, that the government doesn't even have any control over. The Quachapapa Sanctuary is located there. Quachapapa being the youngest but strongest of the Castronucan gods. And they have a flying church, and then the stationary church is their two main locations. And then just south of the Quachapapa Stationary Sanctuary is New Dustin. New Dustin literally was created because when the Dracovans showed up, there was a sign that said Dustin, and they wrote New in front of it. The city got completely wiped out in the Day of White Skies and has been taken over by Dracovans, who were an invading army from hell that now just lives there, and they were invading with Tiamat, so they're all very draconic. In the north, we just have two more places to go. You have Fjerten, also sometimes referred to the Fart because it's a fishing village and it smells very bad. But Fjerten is a smaller town, sort of the main castle, the largest castle in all of the land, the Fort of the North, located in the northern end of the northern island, has been the royal family's sort of vacation destination for centuries. And so a small city sprouted up not far from there so that people could stay near the city and so that you could bring shit to the city. And then that sums up the first two islands, the southern and the northern island. The western island, which is nothing but swamp and a mountain range in the north, is currently being ruled by the Lizardborn and the Holy Phacadian Empire. Phacade comes up a lot. It died and then everyone pretended it was still alive and that they were it. Mudtown is currently being ruled by the Lizardborn. And then Rick Ligman is the dwarven city that is the center of the Holy Phacadian Empire. And that's the three islands. But zooming out from the three islands, and this is information unknown to the world, although unknown to some of my players, but all of the three islands and Draconsland and everything is housed inside of an atmosphere. To the north of that atmosphere, there's another atmosphere that was very similar at some point to the main atmosphere, the material plane, but because it had two suns, a sun that it had originally and then another sun thrusted into it, became the Feywild. And in the south, a plane once known as the Pine Barrens, when they got taken over by someone who needed to kill the plant race that was ruling it at the time, they got rid of the sun, took it to the Feywild, and then without the sun, the plants died. So the plants are dead because of the sun, and that's now known as the Shadowfell. So you have the three planes of existence, but they're all just real locations in different atmospheres. And then, zooming out even more, my world is not a sphere. It is a giant stone ring, rotating in a pool of water. So it has the elemental plane of stone is the ring, elemental plane of water is the water, and then the air is the air, and then it's rotating around the elemental plane of fire, a giant ball of fire. And there's 26 atmospheres on these islands, on this stone ring. The main one, of course, being the three right next to each other. And that's my world. It's crazy.